Thanks, Pritika, and thank you for this opportunity for talking on last mile packaging. I presume everyone can see the screen.
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Great. So we have had several speakers actually talk a lot on the last mile packaging, or rather packaging in general, as well as the challenges in logistics. So I do hope it's not too much of a repeat, but nevertheless, let me throw some slides which would focus more on the last mile solution rather than the entire supply chain that several people talked about, right from Mr. Mahajan in the morning in Wipro, in terms of the fact that he really brought up that more than 70 or 80% of the current logistics that is happening in the country for pharma is not monitored, from end to end. And that's a great challenge, of course. And I'll focus on more on the temperature control aspect during this presentation. So if you look at the global temperature control packaging market, it's actually growing almost at a 10% CAGR rate. So if you see these figures from 2016 to all the way to 2021, we have gone from 6 billion to 10 billion, and it's expected to go up to 15 billion. So it's a huge market, and it's also not just a huge market, it's important that we do it right. And all of us have been, hearing about the COVID vaccines, for example. We are talking of temperatures of 2 to 8. We are talking of -20 for Sputnik, for example, and we are talking of -60 or -70 for the Pfizer vaccine. Moderna needs a different temperature. Covishield and Covaxin are at 2 to 8. So temperatures are different for different products, different, biopharma products, different. Even when you talk about, organ transport, for example, lung transport or heart transport, you want a certain temperature. So temperature control, and all of it is currently being done by basically two methods. One, either you use an ice pack or you use dry ice. And the interesting thing is, when you use ice pack, it's let's say 0 degrees Celsius. When you use dry ice, it's -70 degrees Celsius. So we are trying to use two materials at 0 and -70 and trying to get different ranges of temperatures. This market slide that you see, it's kind of breaking it up into three things. One is insulated shippers, insulated containers, and other kind of products. And the insulated shippers form almost 30% of the market. And that's what is typically being used for transporting. If you look at the temperatures required, there are three different types of temperature. And, as the previous speaker, I think Vikram and even Sanil Mahajan in the morning mentioned that, most of it is 2 to 8 degrees, and that is classified as the chilled area. That's 50% of the market. And ambient is about 16%. And very interesting thing to note about ambient also is that when you're talking of ambient, people are using the European or the US definition of ambient. And for them, the ambient is 25 degrees Celsius and not 35 degrees or 40 degrees Celsius as countries like India face for several months in a year. So even that transport that is happening is perhaps not happening at the right temperature and is in some way affecting the drug or the product that is being transported. You don't want it too hot either. So what are these challenges? And when you look at the entire supply chain, right from the point of the raw material, which again, I think Vikram Srivastav mentioned a lot, end to end, the raw material transport is probably happening at the right temperatures. People are taking care of it. But as you move from the entire supply chain, you see the complexity increasing when you get to the last mile, where you have the clearing and forwarding agents who are giving it to the distributors, hospitals, stockists, getting it to your home. Within the hospital, it's going from one floor to the other floor. So that component is actually the most complex in terms of supply chain, and the product actually sees thermal shocks at that point of time. And more than 20-25% wastage that we see and we talk about when we are talking about, let's say, vaccine wastage is happening at that point, more than from the manufacturer to the stockist. There the manufacturers take care, but nobody bothers because we don't have any guidelines which are enforced upon us. It's very unfortunate, but that's the way every human being is. Unless you're a police, you don't do it right. So so that's where most of the challenge lies, in the last mile. I mentioned about the temperatures, and if you look at this, this is a large part of the world, and it's hot for a long period of time. Right from it's already got to 30 degrees Celsius in Delhi. From today until May, June, July, end of July, August, we are going to be seeing temperatures going up from 30 to 40 and back to 30 again. But that's a substantial part of the year. So at these temperatures, there are not many solutions that have been done because the entire pharma packaging which has evolved in the West more than in these countries. And those solutions are being now bought into our situations, which may not always be the best. When you look at packaging, as I mentioned, you're looking at thermocol and ice packs for centuries and still using it. It's a good method, no doubt about it, but does it fit all solutions or all medicines or all pharma products or vaccines? So these tend to be a little imprecise. You even may have lower backup, or they're not validated. Every manufacturer is using a different kind of thermocol. Costs are so important in India that you tend to reduce the cost. It's very interesting. Nobody's going to sell it to you at a loss. Now, if the same company is buying a thermocol and ice pack at 600 rupees and another is buying it at 800 rupees, there is going to be some difference. One, of course, yes, if he's just making that extra profit, but that's typically not the case. It's the density of the thermocol, it's the thickness of the thermocol. There are boxes where the four sides would be, let's say, 2 inches, but the lid is 1.5 inches. You have saved enough material to give that at 600 rupees to the pharma company, for example. So these are the kind of things that have been happening. So we need to move towards more validated solutions which have higher backup and are more precise. So one should not just look at the cost, we should also look at the total cost of ownership in terms of what is the value of the product. Is it, do I want to spend another 15 years to get rid of tuberculosis, for example, or do I want to, I have already spent 20 years to declare India as polio free. Now, could that have been done in a shorter period of time? Probably, because maybe most of the polio vaccines which were given were probably not as effective as they should have been. And we don't want to see that happening again. Vaccines may just be around the corner given the way the world is progressing in terms of consumerism. So there is a lot of these things which have to be taken care of when you are choosing your packaging. So what makes a good packaging? As I said, insulation is very important role, and there are different types of insulations to choose from. The choice of coolant, is ice pack and dry ice your best bet, or can you look at something else? How easy and convenient is it for you to use? And am I monitoring my temperature? So these are very simple, very commonsensical approaches, but one tends to ignore it very often at times. So if you look at this block diagram that you have on the right of the screen, it's telling you that the black ones are the coolants. So this is a very simple solution for a person to use. Instead of putting the ice packs or coolants all over, I have this box, I put 2 coolants at the bottom, I put my payload, and I put 2 coolants at the top and close it. So such a design could probably be a very simple, easy to use design, less problems from the packaging point of view, because you have to make the job of the operator easy. So all these things have to be taken care of. Insulation. So we need to move from thermocol, which is EPS or expanded polystyrene, to PU foam, which is polyurethane foam, to something like vacuum insulation panels. So if you all remember this Milton bottle that a lot of us have been using in has now become one of these sleek looking bottles. The difference is I have PU foam in this 700 ml or 1 liter bottle, and I have vacuum insulation in this steel bottle. It's become more smaller, more compact, and it keeps my water cold or hot for a longer period of time. So I have moved in these things, we have moved away. But and as a consumer, the consumer is willing to pay that extra bit to get a vacuum insulated bottle, for example. So such things have to be incorporated. We have to look at newer designs, and expanded polystyrene, we all know, is so environment unfriendly. So there have to be, while polyurethane is better, any kind of solutions that are, it's not new, but it has to be adopted. If you look at the thickness, a glass pipe, something like 80 mm, yes, which we are using, it goes to 160 and so on. So if you go to better insulations, you're reducing the volume of your packaging material also. The other thing is a right kind of cooling material. And here we talk of phase change materials, which are essentially like ice, but at different temperatures. So ice is a phase change material from water to ice, ice to water. It's changing your phase. And that's happening at 0 degrees Celsius. So we are looking at different temperatures. So can I have a phase change material for 15 to 25 degrees, which means can I use something like 22-degree material or a 18-degree material, which is between 15 and 25? Excuse me. For 2 to 8, if I move away from ice and use something like a 3-degree material or a 5-degree material, I'll ensure that my product, which is the vaccine or the pharma product, does not go below 2 at any point of time. So you are preventing that product from freezing, because once it goes below 2 or 0 or -1, then you are looking at freezing your vaccine, which may actually spoil it. Similarly, when you look at -15 to -25, people have used dry ice. Now, dry ice, as I said, is about -76 degrees Celsius. So why use dry ice? I am using a lot of energy to produce something at -76. But if I can do that at -20, I may still maintain -15 to -25. So that's where the change of coolant from a typical gel pack needs to happen. And it's not just that, it is, can I make it reusable? So phase change materials today are like tested for 3000 odd cycles. So I can use it theoretically 3000 times, provided I can bring it back. It in the graph, you see the circled area where you're trying to show that if you have a gel pack, you are going below 0 degrees Celsius for the first 1 or 2 hours. That can be avoided if I move away to a 3-degree or a 5-degree material from the gel pack, which is a 0-degree material like water. So this is PCMs can be from several temperatures, right? We, for example, have from -33 to 89. Depending on what you're doing. So whether you're looking at hot food transport or you're looking at cold pharmaceuticals, so you can have different kinds of materials. And the common word that is also used for this is thermal batteries, because it's storing thermal energy around a particular temperature. Temperature monitoring is another thing. I will, in the interest of time, not dwell too much on it, because even the presentation from Wipro in the morning talked a lot about it. In the last presentation, Dr. Varun Gupta also mentioned a lot about it. So you need to have the right solutions to map your temperature right from the start till the end of the product life, or rather till it gets to the consumer. So there are lots of solutions in the market today, companies like Tagbox, Logmore. I mean, there's several of them, Wipro. So they are all doing it. 1mg is doing their own solution. But something like these is a challenge, and people need to start adopting it. And start using it. All of it does lead to increase in costs in the immediate term, but in the long term, it will always be cost effective.
Mr. Jain, just a small request if you could conclude earlier, a bit.
Sure. So I'll just take 2 more minutes and close it. So this is again on basing it on the cloud. So can we have it in the cloud so that it's easier to track? So to kind of summarize, there are several drivers, which is basically effective temperature control, long hour requirement, adhering to regulations that may exist, but the restraint being the cost or the complexities that may come up. Different solutions have been done by our organization of different sizes, catering to different requirements, whether it's first mile or last mile at the right temperature. In fact, the COVID-19 test kit, which Tata MD is making, the Tata MD check, has a box which has two compartments, one 2 to 8 and the other -15 to -25 for transporting the reagents and the test kit. And this is effectively worked over the last few months that it has been done. So I think that's about all that I have to share. I am open for any questions that anybody may have.